That was a fabulous talk.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
What I want to do is turn it over to questions from the audience, and the way we want to run this is we have two people with microphones that are in the back of the room, so if you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll point towards you and they'll come forward with the mic. And we want to give people, as many people as possible, a chance to ask a question, so we just ask that you keep your question as short as you possibly can, and we'll go from there. So questions?
Thank you so much. I'm really moved and also saddened by the message because it is so still actual. I left corporate world, I achieved as high ceilings as I could go, and it left in the skies. Now I am as an entrepreneur who is bouncing against similar consideration and limitations. Of course, I am persevering going forward. There's a lot of questions that you inspired me to ask, but one very important. I found my answer, but I am wondering what action-driven answer would you suggest? What's next to try? I don't believe in trying another senior vice president position as a mission for us. Or current activities did not change a lot. Pay inequality is still here. Everything is still here. So what's the call to action? And last thing that always bothers me, when I come to the venture capital events that this valley is full of, I don't see black women being funded. I don't see a lot of women being funded.
Being funded?
Yeah.
Funded startups. Because power is in startups. Power is in creating next Google by us women. Women as captains of the industry, not as a workers only. So I am just exploding with emotions, as you can see, but also empowerment.
Yes.
Huge empowerment, which I feel for all of us and each of us. So thank you very much for your message.
Thank you. Thank you. I think one of the things, and there are many others, of course, though, is to which I was trying to talk about, is to really understand how we're looking at the world and how we're looking at these issues and moments. And I think it really helps when we have a certain kind of vision before us that we have to live up to. And you know, a lot of people find answers in all kinds of disciplines and religion and others. I sort of find answers, a lot of the questions that I ask myself, I find in history. So that's certainly one of the things. The other is that, and I didn't mention this, I've cut out some things I felt I was going too long. There is some cause, and I should have mentioned this, I think some cause for optimism too. The White House has changed the language to say that this initiative will help communities of color, including boys. You know, and who knows if substantively that's going to, any substance is going to mean anything. But I think at the least it tells us that if we, you know, and I say we, but it's really people like Kimberly Crenshaw and others who really took the lead, who really worked at this and met with people and did the op-ed, if you saw it, wonderful in the New York Times, et cetera, who deserve all of this credit. I think people are going to be hesitant to try to do that again. Yeah. You know. And the other thing I wanted to mention, which is really important to mention, that one of the things that turns it around, we talk about, yes, coalitions are difficult, and I think we see why one reason why they're fraud. But it was a letter by Gloria Steinem supporting the inclusion of women in this initiative that I think was very important to turning this around. The word has it that when Gloria said something, that the White House started spinning on its heels about this and started thinking about it. So, and also, you know, black men also came and also the group of black men who were important allies also this, and they wrote a letter to the president, et cetera, talking about inclusion and talking about what the wonderful law scholar Paul Butler talks about black male exceptionalism on some of those that are representing, these crises and that was talking about. So there's some hope there, and some coalitions that work on this issue, and I hope on other issues. It's so doggone hard to get it. The months to get even those things together, and the energy, and to deal with the people who are opposed, was very, it can be very difficult. And a lot of black women were opposed to the critique of the White House. Not a lot of black women. Some organizations, little heads, were opposed to the critique as well of the White House. So, so it's complicated and it's tough, but things can happen.
Sandra.
Hi, my name is Antoinette. I'm currently a student here, and I wanted to ask you a question about I often think about race, gender, and sexuality as moving in the same directions, and right now what I've noticed is that the current face of the trans inclusion movement are actually black trans women, such as Janet Mock and Laverne Cox. So I'm wondering, where do you see sort of trans women in the face of this movement that we're having right now, especially with black trans women like making the moves for equality for all trans women, but still having a limited aspect of involvement in terms of feminism?
Yes, absolutely. Well, this is a movement, and it's very interesting. There are issues around this going on at Smith, particularly, and women's colleges, right? And let me just look at this as a microcosm as well of the larger question. Certainly, I'm not answering the larger question, but Smith is finally sort of coming to the. They haven't come to it yet, but there are discussions, or they're coming to the conclusion that, what you call yourself, you are, right? And this is, when you think about it, as simple as that statement is, quite revolutionary. Not in terms of Smith necessarily, but in terms of societal, right? And in terms of one's internal sense of, I think, liberation as well. So this is an exciting movement, and the movement, and you're right, it's not there yet, but it teaches us. It has the potential for teaching us so much, and for helping of our discourse as well. Black women really helped for this idea of intersection and in the women's movement. Gay and queer really helped us to bring in sexuality as part of that intersection in a way that was very important, and it had been ignored, or people had problems with it. And trans is going to also be very important to us clarifying and thinking about those issues and the kind of support it's going to mobilize. So I'm very excited about it.
Hi, I'm so glad that you raised the trans issue, because I remember when I think Laverne was on the cover of Time, and white trans people were really mad about that. They were pissed off that she was representing that. Right? So my question is related to this allies. You used the word allies. I don't believe in allies, because when you define ally, it's defined as a mutually beneficial relationship. And so when you think about black women, right? Who out there is going to be able to establish a mutually beneficial relationship? So you have white women on this end, right, because all the women are white, and then you have black men because all the black people are men. So who is really going to be able to do that? So just to make a point of what's happened, I'm sorry, my name is Feminista Jones. I'm speaking tomorrow, and I do a lot of work around violence against women, particularly with street harassment. In the last 2 weeks, we have had 4 incidences of black women either being killed or severely injured because they rejected rejected men's advances, right? So when we talk about, street harassment and violence and things like that, I and others talk about how black women are more likely to have harsher experiences with that. When you talk about the wage gap, black women are going to have that worse, right? You talk about any statistic that's related to women, black women and women of color are going to experience it worse. And if you pull us out of it, where are white women's numbers, right? Where's the strength? The strength in the argument declines a bit when you remove women of color from this thing. And yet, where's the mutually beneficial relationship between white women and black women, or between black women and black men? Because if anybody has an investment in the subjugation of black women, it is white women and black men together. And when you brought up Douglas and things like that. So what are we supposed to do about this ally stuff? And how are we supposed to trust people who do not have any real investment in working with us, black women? Because what benefit are we getting from allying with white women or with black men? Or what benefit are they getting from us? And so if you could maybe talk about this idea of trusting allies and trusting people to actually have our best interests, because it's hard for me, I'm admitting that, it's hard for me as a black woman to believe that white women actually have my interest and my best interest at heart, and the same thing for black men, that they actually have my best interest at heart.
How allies can help one another. They don't have to like one another. I'm not sure if they even have to trust one another, but they have to be able to work with one another. One of the examples that when you talk about taking black women out of an equation, how it changes, if you take, everybody talks about the women's vote. The women's vote is not a progressive vote unless you include black women in it. If it's just white women, the white women's vote's a conservative vote. They vote for more conservatives than they do for liberals. What makes the women's vote, Catholic Paula and other people talk about this, what makes the women's vote a progressive vote, when people talk about the women's vote like it's on the left, is women of color in it, right? So there is a question, though, if we could do better in mobilizing that idea and that vote to do things, and I know there are people who don't want to deal with the state on any, issue, which I respect, by the way, because it could be its own problem, as we even saw with this, what I was talking about with suffrage. But if we could mobilize, and particularly I think about black women, mobilizing of women's vote and directing it to our needs, I think that would be very important for us to do. You talk about, there's no question about this, the stats. The wealth, the average wealth, you know this, I know you know these stats. $100 for black women. For a single black woman is $100. The median wealth. Holy mackerel. And with our power in the electorate, we're not able to do more about that. Our potential power in the electorate, So I think, and even if when I talked about people coming along with, and I'm talking about this initiative as just an example of one among any examples of people coming from outside of the black community to help with this, could end up in helping a lot of black girls. So I think you can be mutually beneficial. I'm not talking about, but again, this is not. I wasn't trying to talk about a kind of a la-la, let's all be happy in this kind of liberal view of alliances, but that it's essential that we be able to effectively work them out to help each other, because as Shelley pointed out, man, we're going down, right? And I think these splits are an important reason why they're going down.
Just to follow up on that a bit, is the alliance, as I understand the alliances you talk about them, they're sort of strategic alliances where on a particular issue, and your telling of history really shows this, groups come together, they seem to be working together, things fracture, they fall apart in different ways. There are these sort of strategic alliances that a given issue brings people together, and their incentives maybe line up then, but don't necessarily line up for all of history in this sort of liberal telling as your is that yeah.
Yes. Thank you. That's yes.
Question? I have a question right here.
I am biracial, you wouldn't know it. And so for me, I've done a lot of work, anti-racist work, online and offline. I've led organizations for black girls and Latina girls, politicizing them to their status in our country and learning about feminist icons, the ones that we don't hear about. And for me, my biggest frustration is, because I am also white, that my white feminist counterparts have no interest. Period. And it's come to the point where I don't think there's much possible. My question to you is, where is that possibility? Like, how can we make these issues relevant to white feminists who seem to be very myopic in their views of what feminism means and what issues facing girls mean, as opposed to just, it's really white girls that they care about. I've tried everything, even one-on-one conversations, everything. It's just, there's a blindness that, I guess I'm just asking, do you have suggestions around that? Because obviously there are women, white women, that do care, and they are going to fight the fight. But as a society, people like Gloria Steinem, she's leading the way, and so she's leading the debate, and so women follow her, and even her contemporaries of our time that are younger. The issues aren't the same, so how can we make those relevant so we can all look at it as a coalition of rights for all women?
People have to figure out that it's in their mutual interests to work together. They don't have to be that interested in everybody, They don't have to be emotional about it. But I think, again, I just look at alliance and coalition through how it can be beneficial politically and economically. Wouldn't it be interesting that if if one of our principles was to make women equal to women, and not just, right? I mean, suppose we looked at that $100 figure, and I think the figure for, I forgot now, the figure for, Feminists, do you remember? For white single women is like $60,000 or something like that. So let's look at why that is. It takes a lot of effort for that to happen. It's hard for that kind of people to be in the same country and for that to happen. And I think on a larger issue, and I know this is an abstract issue, but we can't have a country with those kinds of inequities. It's not going to make it. All right. But it's hard work to do this, and a lot of people don't care. I know. Yeah. And a lot of people are also in opposition. But the work is out there. There are a lot of people in opposition to women getting a vote at all. A lot of women in opposition to abolition. A lot of women, people in general. I mean, these are always a small minority. And with black women, it's even the smallest minority, right? There's always a small group of, in terms of being interested in their rights, there's always just a small group of activists who, lead the way and who are the critical thinkers that sort of get us out of one, of a negative paradigm and get us to a different one. So it's not even numbers. So I think that's the way to look at it.
If we have time for one more question, I think you have one over there.
Hi, good evening. My name is Latoya Baldwin Clark. I come here as a mother, and I think about, what do I tell my little girl about being a black woman and growing up in the United States? And then not even that, I have little boys. What do I tell my little boys? How do I give them a sense of optimism, but also a sense of the reality and their role in making change and pushing forward for change? They're still very little, but what do I tell them? Because sometimes I'm just at a loss.
I'm assuming you mean, what do I tell them because of all the negativities and everything around. And he gave a talk on this. There's something sort of black cultural theory that people are talking about, black pessimism. Right? And it's the idea that, which we have to face, is the idea that Western civilization is based on anti-blackness. Yeah. This is a hard pill to swallow, right? You have to be aware of that to be able to navigate, right? But at the same time, you know, and I'm quoting, I should give him credit, his name is Kevin Quash, I should give him credit. He said, you know, there are a lot of black pessimists who have wonderful lives. You know? I mean, you embrace the life. You embrace those good things. You embrace being an agent for change, which is a thrilling way to live your life, all right? You think, you know the gospel the song "Just Above My Head," you know? I mean, you look up, all right? But I don't think you can. A great example for me is Ida B. Wells, who had to, one reason why she had trouble with her anti-lynching campaign is getting traction, because some people thought that there was so much good stuff happening with black people, you know, like at the top, that everything was just going to resolve itself, right? And nobody wanted to hear about the lynchings and the segregation and mass incarceration, which was happening back there too. And she said, no, you've got to understand that both are happening at the same time. That's what America is, you know, that's going on one level, and this sort of, you know, this hope, sort of progressive idea of the country that keeps more perfect union, because I'm going to throw up if I hear that one more time. You know, we need to remember, all right, on one level, and on the other level, stuff is, look at Obama. I mean, Obama's president, and the black people are worse off than they've been in a long time, you know. I don't want to go too far afield in this, but you know, the subprime crisis, I mean, one reason why these other statistics are the greatest transfer of wealth out of the black community in history with the subprime. Right, that targeted black communities and targeted black women who are just getting homes. Yes. Right, you know. So yeah, it's hard to tell people that, you know. But there is that side, the other side, above my head.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for being here.